Welcome back to the Lars Larson Show. Dr. Zuhdi Jasser joins us now, founder and president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy. Doctor, it's good to have you back on the show.
Oh, it's great to be with you again, Lars. Thanks for having me.
There are an awful lot of people out there upset about the fact that Rolling Stone magazine put the picture of this Boston bomber, this terrorist, on the cover of the magazine. So angry that a lot of private companies have said, we don't want it on the newsstands at all, and I applaud their decision not to stock the magazine for this particular issue. But you say they're missing a really important element of this story. What is it?
Well, the important element is it's not necessarily the picture, which is basically almost like a glamour shot with his Armani shirt on, but it's the context of it. And that the context is young men like this look like normal, regular guys. Nidal Hassan in his uniform looked like I did when I was in the Navy, and clean cut and appear to be well-adjusted, economically fine and educated. But then the slope of radicalization is a ideology that takes them down a slope of political Islam, feels that America is against Islam and Muslims, and makes them radicalized towards being part of the global jihad. That's what should have been under in bold letters on the cover, saying this American next door is possibly a terrorist, and you wouldn't know it. And we need to counter the ideology. I mean, this is the concept that is being missed. And the narrative so far in the past few days has been that they have glorified it, and I would agree that it's offensive. I mean, Vogue magazine did the same thing with Esma Assad, the wife of the dictator Bashar Assad, who's committing a genocide, and they then pulled the article, and the left has this penchant to sort of be celebrity almost conscious with dictators and terrorists and things like that. But I still think the part that we're missing is that, he does look like a regular American. He does look like a normal guy that no one would have noticed unless they looked at his ideology and that radicalization pattern. And nobody really is talking about that you really can't pick these guys out of a lineup. And to think that somehow if we made him look like Khalid Sheikh Mohammed or some of the guys that look, you remember the whole thing with the bus in Seattle, the pictures that the FBI had to take down because CARE complained because they all looked supposedly one way. Well, which way do they want it? If they look foreign, they get upset because it's stereotypes. If they look like Americans, we then end up glamorizing them. So either way, we got to get to the ideology. It's not about the way they look.
No, and in fact, I agree with you about that. I was bothered by the fact that they put him on there and they appeared to be doing, I guess I would call it a sympathetic picture of him. They didn't show him in an orange jumpsuit. They didn't show him in police custody. They didn't show him being walked into a jail cell. They used this picture that could be the picture of anybody. But you're right. It's probably an important lesson to say, just like you want to teach your kids that while the stereotype of a pervert at the neighborhood playground is a dirty old man in a dirty raincoat, that in fact we know that child molesters look like all kinds of things that look normal. They look like your neighborhood priest or pastor. They look like the lady who runs the daycare center. They look they're very well camouflaged in many cases, and yet they're very dangerous. Maybe it should have said the face of Islamic Jihad looks like the kid down the street.
Exactly. And if that was on the cover with his Armani shirt and cute looks, I would have been happy with that, because I'll tell you, the story on Nidal Hassan, they keep showing him in his jumpsuit suit with his beard, and he looks like, evil warmed over. That is not going to teach Americans that we have an ideological problem. While if you put him in his army suit looking like I did when I graduated from medical school, I want to see him put to death in his uniform looking like he did when he killed the 31 Americans that he did.
Yeah, I think that's
forgetting.
That's a very good point, because you forget, if we don't start looking for those people in the ranks, then you end up with the treatment that Hassan got before he murdered people, and that was he said the craziest things, but because he was in uniform and he was part of the command. I mean, he was not a PFC. That people looked at him and said, well, we have to let him say those things because otherwise we'll appear to be intolerant. I think America should be incredibly intolerant of the kind of ideas that he was pushing before he ever pulled the trigger.
Exactly, and that's the conversation we continue to sort of, have so many obstacles of political correctness from. Janet Reitman that wrote this Rolling Stone story, it's over 10,000 words, and she never gets into the ideology. She has, it opens that he was a charming kid, bright future, but somehow I guess he spontaneously combusted into being a monster, and she even in some ways gives apologetics about his family and his parents. And, in my book, A Battle for the Soul of Islam, I talk about how the familial unit is what starts a lot of this alienation towards America, conspiracy theories and else. And we saw that in the narrative of what his mother said when he was arrested. So a lot of these things were there, and Rolling Stone wasted over 10,000 words and a cover that basically apologized for the kid and made him into a victim instead of really taking an opportunity to teach. I mean, they even put an editor's note at the beginning that actually said one of the right things. It said that he's the same age group of many of their readers, and it makes it all the more important for us to examine the complexities of the issues. Well, that's great, but then they didn't do it.
Well, and in fact, you made another point that went beyond that America had failed them. Rather than say, by living here, think how much better off they were in terms of opportunities, freedoms, and everything else than they would have been back at home in that part of the, of Russia. Instead, they were here where they had all these things in front of them and available to them, even if the one brother's boxing career had failed. This country did not fail them. And I think that kind of indictment is even worse than the picture on the front.
Exactly. And this is you wonder why, coming on 12 years now after 9/11, we have yet, the Muslim world is starting to reject the Brotherhood and the Islamist ideology in Egypt and elsewhere, while we, on the other hand, are facilitating the ideology while we continue to say that we are the problem, when in fact many of these people come here for freedom like my family did, but yet we are not pushing them to take sides in the conflict. And we continue to, cozy up to our enemies and not realize that we're allowing them to flourish their ideas without any public confrontation within the religious, Muslim community about, what is this Islamo-patriotism that makes them become enemies of our state and feel that all Americans could be targets. And that's what we need to push the buttons on to talk about how to counter this ideology.
I couldn't agree with you more. And Dr. Jasser, I appreciate you coming on the show. Let me say one thing to you, though, too. This is weird behavior from Rolling Stone, because if you were to characterize Rolling Stone as generally pro-gay marriage, pro-homosexual equal rights, pro-abortion, I think that would be a fair characterization of their editorial point of view. Everything they represent is antithetical to that of the people who believe in Sharia. And you'd think, that while this is a magazine that'll demonize the likes of Mitt Romney and conservatives like you or me, they'll turn to this kid, put him in there, favorably display him, and not point out that his very ideology runs 180 degrees opposed to virtually everything they stand for. Dr. Zuhdi Jasser is author of A Battle for the Soul of Islam, and you're listening to Compass Media Networks.